It doesn't matter.
But I
Or
think
Ozzy Osbourne, who just died, bless him.
What happens when the most diplomatic man in heavy metal history breaks 50 years of silence to unleash absolute destruction on one of rock's biggest legends? Today, we're witnessing the most shocking character assassination in music history, and it's coming from the last person anyone expected. Geezer Butler, the intellectual backbone of Black Sabbath, the man who's never said a harsh word about anyone, the peacekeeper who stayed quiet through every metal controversy for 5 decades, just dropped a statement so brutal, so perfectly calculated, that it's sending shockwaves through the entire music industry. For 53 years, Geezer Butler has been heavy metal's Switzerland. While Tony Iommi and Ozzy had public feuds, while record labels tried to destroy bands, while the metal world erupted in controversy after controversy, Butler remained diplomatically silent. He's praised everyone from Metallica to newer bands, never burned bridges, never engaged in public conflicts. This is the same man who stayed diplomatic when Sabbath nearly imploded in the 1970s. When Tony Iommi and Ozzy had their most vicious public battles, Butler was the voice of reason keeping the band together. When record executives tried to control their sound and turn them into a commercial product, Butler fought behind the scenes while maintaining his public dignity. He's been gracious to bands that completely overshadowed Sabbath's influence without giving proper credit. When Metallica became the face of heavy metal, Butler congratulated them publicly. When newer bands claimed to have invented sounds that Sabbath pioneered, Butler smiled and wished them well. When critics dismissed heavy metal as primitive noise, Butler responded with intellectual arguments and scholarly analysis rather than anger. Until now. Roger Waters made the fatal mistake of attacking Ozzy Osbourne's legacy, and Butler's response isn't just surprising. It's a complete character revelation that suggests decades of buried resentment finally exploding into the open. Butler's official response reads like a surgical strike designed to destroy Waters' reputation permanently. Roger Waters has built his entire career on the illusion of artistic integrity while systematically undermining genuine artists behind closed doors. His recent attack on Ozzy's legacy is simply the latest example of behavior I've observed for nearly 5 decades. I remain silent out of respect for taking the high road, but watching someone kick a grieving family while they mourn has shown me that sometimes silence only enables toxic behavior. But Butler didn't stop there. The follow-up portions of his statement became increasingly devastating, revealing a level of personal knowledge about Waters that shocked everyone. I've watched Roger manipulate situations for his own benefit while positioning himself as a champion of artistic purity. The progressive rock community deserves better than someone who builds his reputation by tearing down others who've achieved genuine connection with their audiences. This isn't emotional grief talking. This is calculated warfare from someone who's been studying his target for decades, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. What makes Butler's attack so devastating is its surgical precision. He didn't just defend Ozzy, he systematically dismantled Waters' entire public persona by exposing what he claims is a pattern of behavior spanning nearly 50 years. Butler positioned Waters' attack on Ozzy not as an isolated incident, but as evidence of deep character flaws that contradict everything Waters claims to represent. This suggests Butler has been documenting Waters' behavior for decades, building a case that he's now finally ready to present to the world. The language Butler used reveals something even more significant. This isn't about musical differences or artistic rivalry. This is personal in a way that suggests a history between these two legends that goes far deeper than anyone realized. Butler didn't just defend Ozzy. He exposed Waters using a pattern of behavior that Butler claims to have witnessed for almost 50 years. This suggests a history between these two that goes far deeper than anyone realized. Industry veterans are now revealing that Butler and Waters have been aware of each other since the early 1970s, when both Black Sabbath and Pink Floyd were emerging as defining forces in their respective genres. But their relationship has been carefully kept out of public view, with both men maintaining professional distance despite operating in overlapping circles. The timing is surgical. Butler waited until Waters had already damaged his own reputation, then struck at the perfect moment for maximum impact. This isn't about defending a friend. This is about settling a score that apparently dates back to the founding days of both progressive rock and heavy metal. What's particularly striking is how Butler has maintained his intellectual high ground while delivering devastating personal attacks. He's not just calling Waters a hypocrite, he's systematically proving it using Waters' own actions as evidence. Butler's follow-up statement was even more devastating, revealing the depth of his analysis of Waters' character. Waters represents everything toxic about ego-driven artistry. He builds walls between himself and genuine human connection, then attacks others for having the authentic relationships he's incapable of forming. Ozzy spent his career breaking down barriers between performers and audiences, creating real connections that Waters could never understand because he's too busy protecting his image to actually connect with anyone. This is character assassination at the highest level, not just attacking Waters' actions, but systematically dismantling his entire persona as an artist of integrity. Butler is essentially arguing that Waters' entire reputation is built on a foundation of hypocrisy and manipulation. The most brutal part of Butler's attack is how he contrasts Waters with Ozzy. While Waters built walls and maintained distance, Ozzy broke down barriers and created genuine connections. While Waters protected his image, Ozzy risked everything to be authentic with his audience. Butler is essentially arguing that Waters' attack on Ozzy reveals his fundamental inability to understand what real artistic authenticity looks like. Within hours, Butler's statement was trending globally. Major metal artists are either rallying behind Butler or expressing complete shock that the diplomatic Sabbath bassist finally broke his golden rule about public conflicts. James Hetfield of Metallica was among the first to respond. When Geezer Butler speaks, the metal world listens. He's earned that respect through decades of integrity. Rob Halford of Judas Priest added, "Geezer has been the conscience of heavy metal for 50 years. If he's breaking his silence, it's because something needed to be said." But the responses from the progressive rock community have been notably muted. Many artists who would normally defend Waters seem unsure how to respond to such a methodical character assassination from someone as respected as Butler. The silence from Waters' usual supporters is deafening and suggests that Butler's accusations might have hit closer to home than anyone expected. But here's what's really stunning. If Geezer Butler felt strongly enough to break 50 years of diplomatic silence, then Waters must have crossed a line that goes far beyond his comments about Ozzy. Industry insiders are quietly revealing that Butler and Waters have complex, decades-old history that's been carefully hidden from public view. Sources close to both camps are now suggesting that this conflict dates back to the early 1970s, when both progressive rock and heavy metal were establishing their identities as distinct genres. According to these sources, there was significant tension between the progressive rock establishment and the emerging heavy metal scene. Progressive rock artists like Waters viewed heavy metal as primitive and intellectually inferior, while metal pioneers like Butler saw progressive rock as pretentious and disconnected from genuine emotion. But the conflict apparently went beyond musical philosophy. Industry veterans are now revealing that there were behind-the-scenes conflicts over record label support, media coverage, and industry recognition that created lasting animosity between key figures in both genres. Butler's decision to finally break his silence suggests that Waters' attack on Ozzy was the final straw in a conflict dating back to the early 1970s. The precision of his attack, waiting for the perfect moment, using Waters' behavior toward Ozzy as evidence of a larger pattern, positioning this as decades of documented toxic behavior. This wasn't reactive grief. This was strategic warfare from someone who's been planning this moment for a very long time. What's becoming clear is that Butler's attack on Waters is about something much larger than defending Ozzy's legacy. This appears to be about fundamental questions of artistic integrity, industry politics, and the hierarchy of respect within rock music. For decades, progressive rock has been positioned as more intellectually sophisticated than heavy metal. Critics and industry gatekeepers have treated bands like Pink Floyd as serious artists, while dismissing metal pioneers as primitive noisemakers. Butler's attack suggests that this hierarchy was artificially created through systematic manipulation rather than genuine artistic superiority. He's essentially arguing that Waters built his reputation as a champion of artistic integrity, while privately undermining the very principles he publicly championed. If Butler is right, then the entire critical narrative around progressive rock versus heavy metal has been distorted by decades of behind-the-scenes manipulation. Butler's statement reveals something industry veterans have suspected for years. There are deep, hidden conflicts between the progressive rock and heavy metal communities that have never been publicly addressed. Waters built his reputation as an artist who fights against commercialization and stands for creative integrity. But Butler's attacks suggest that this reputation might be built on systematic hypocrisy, that Waters has been privately undermining the very principles he publicly champions. The implications are staggering. If Butler is correct, then Waters' entire career as a champion of artistic independence is built on a foundation of betraying other artists who were fighting for those same principles. This would mean that one of rock music's most respected figures is actually one of its greatest hypocrites, someone who built his reputation by systematically destroying other artists' attempts to achieve genuine creative independence. The most telling aspect of Butler's approach is how methodically he's destroying Waters' credibility. He didn't just make accusations. He positioned Waters' attack on Ozzy as the latest example in a decades-long pattern of behavior. Butler's strategy reveals sophisticated understanding of reputation management and public relations. By positioning himself as the reluctant truth-teller who stayed silent out of respect, but can no longer ignore toxic behavior, he's created a narrative where his attack appears principled rather than vindictive. He's also chosen his timing perfectly. Waters had already damaged his own reputation with his comments about Ozzy, creating an opening for Butler to strike when Waters was most vulnerable and least able to mount an effective defense. This suggests Butler has been documenting Waters' actions for years, waiting for the perfect moment to expose what he sees as fundamental character flaws that contradict Waters' public persona. Butler's approach represents a masterclass in strategic reputation destruction. Rather than responding emotionally to Waters' comments about Ozzy, he used them as an opportunity to expose what he claims is a decades-long pattern of toxic behavior. By framing his attack as reluctant truth-telling rather than revenge, Butler has positioned himself as the principled defender of heavy metal's integrity while positioning Waters as a hypocrite whose entire reputation is built on deception. The effectiveness of Butler's strategy is evident in the industry's response. Rather than dismissing his comments as emotional overreaction, major figures in both metal and rock are taking his accusations seriously and calling for further investigation. For someone who's built his entire reputation on diplomatic silence, to suddenly unleash this level of calculated destruction means we're witnessing something unprecedented in rock history. Butler doesn't break 50 years of keeping peace just to make a point about Roger Waters' character. He breaks silence when he has evidence, documentation, and a plan to completely expose someone who's been getting away with toxic behavior for far too long. The precision of Butler's attack suggests he's been preparing for this moment for decades, carefully building a case against Waters while maintaining his public reputation for diplomatic restraint. This isn't just about defending Ozzy's legacy. This is about fundamentally challenging the power structure of rock music and exposing what Butler sees as decades of systematic deception and manipulation. The heavy metal community is holding its breath, waiting to see if Butler reveals more about this hidden history. Because if his opening statement was this devastating, what he's been keeping secret for decades might completely rewrite how we understand the relationship between progressive rock and heavy metal. Industry sources suggest Butler's explosive statement might just be the opening move in something much bigger. There are rumors that other metal legends are now prepared to break their own silence about Waters' behavior, creating the possibility of a coordinated attack that could completely destroy Waters' reputation. The progressive rock community, meanwhile, appears to be in crisis mode. Waters' usual supporters are notably quiet, suggesting they're unsure how to respond to such methodical character assassination from someone as respected as Butler. Some industry insiders are predicting that Butler's attack will force a complete reevaluation of the critical hierarchy that has positioned progressive rock as more artistically legitimate than heavy metal. If Butler's accusations are proven correct, it could fundamentally change how we understand the history of rock music. What Butler has started goes far beyond a personal feud between two aging rock legends. This is about the fundamental integrity of rock music's critical establishment and the hidden power dynamics that have shaped the industry for decades. If Butler is right, then one of rock music's most respected figures has been systematically deceiving the public while privately undermining other artists. This would represent one of the greatest scandals in rock history and could completely reshape how we understand the relationship between artistic integrity and industry politics. The implications extend far beyond Waters himself. If the progressive rock establishment's claims of intellectual and artistic superiority are built on systematic deception and manipulation, then the entire critical hierarchy of rock music would need to be re-examined. Butler's 50-year wait for the perfect moment has resulted in maximum damage to Waters' reputation, while positioning himself as the principled guardian of heavy metal's integrity. This isn't just revenge, it's a masterclass in strategic timing and calculated destruction. By maintaining his diplomatic silence for decades, Butler built credibility that makes his current attack devastatingly effective. When someone known for never attacking anyone suddenly unleashes this level of systematic character assassination, people pay attention. The contrast between Butler's decades of restraint and his current brutal honesty creates a narrative where his attack appears principled and necessary rather than vindictive or emotional. Roger Waters attacked a dead man's legacy. Geezer Butler responded by systematically dismantling Waters' living reputation. And based on the precision of his opening move, Waters has no idea what's about to hit him. What Butler has unleashed isn't just an attack on Roger Waters. It's the beginning of a revolution that could fundamentally reshape how we understand rock music history. By exposing what he claims is systematic deception and manipulation by one of progressive rock's most respected figures, Butler is challenging the entire critical establishment. The heavy metal community is already rallying behind Butler, seeing this as their opportunity to claim the historical recognition that has been denied them for decades. Meanwhile, the progressive rock establishment appears to be in crisis, unsure how to respond to such methodical character assassination from such a respected source. The ultimate irony is that Waters' attack on Ozzy, intended to diminish a metal legend's reputation, has instead triggered a response that threatens to destroy Waters' own legacy while elevating the entire heavy metal genre. The silent guardian of heavy metal has finally spoken. And when someone that diplomatic chooses to destroy you, they don't just throw punches, they perform surgical strikes that expose everything wrong with your character. This is just the beginning of the most unexpected war in rock history, and Geezer Butler is playing chess while Roger Waters thought they were having a conversation. The question now isn't whether Butler will continue his attack, it's whether Waters can survive the systematic destruction of his reputation by someone who's been documenting his behavior for nearly 50 years. Subscribe for exclusive updates on this unprecedented metal war. Hit that notification bell because industry insiders promise this is only the beginning of the most shocking revelations in rock history. Comment below, was Butler's 50-year silence followed by total destruction the ultimate power move in rock history? And what do you think Butler has been hiding for decades that could completely rewrite rock music's legacy?